All right, everybody, welcome. Tonight, Dave Siegel is going to lead us on a conversation about some situations that have arisen in the first half so far. We'll hopefully have a nice conversation about mechanical things. So this is certainly designed to be interactive, but I'm going to turn it over to Dave. So Dave, the floor is yours.
All right, welcome everyone. Hopefully your first month of the season has gone well and not too many issues as we, for most of us, I think, head into conference play. A lot of the records go out of the window going into conference play, and the intensity definitely starts to ratchet up in the next each week that we go on. So we thought it might be a good idea to go over the first three CFO videos, or at least pull out a couple plays from those and kind of just talk as a group, talk about the plays and the rules, and then also mechanically how we can officiate them as a group. So this is definitely not just me talking and presenting. I think we've got a couple different positions, if not all the positions represented on the group. So it'd be a good just discussion how we might officiate this on the field, how we can help younger officials in similar situations officiate it. So that's the goal for tonight. We'll go about 45 minutes. If we get through all the plays, great. If we don't, that's okay. I'm sure we can talk a lot of football if we wanted to. So if I've done this correctly, you should all see this play up on the screen now.
Yep.
And good. So that's step one. When technology works, it's always a good thing. So this first play, if you remember, a long play with a run down the sideline near the goal line and near the pylon. So we've got a traditional pylon play. So a couple issues to talk about here: the communication with the short wing and deep wing, and then the variety of rules that involve the pylon or not as it goes away. There we go. As the pylon or not. So let's talk about the rules first. Obviously, if he fumbles the ball in the field of play before reaching the goal line, and the ball hits the pylon, it's a touchback. So real important as a covering official to rule here: did he step out of bounds? Is he in bounds? And then obviously, did he have control of the ball when he contacts the pylon, or was the ball loose before the ball contacted the pylon? So let's first talk about on the field mechanically: short wings and deep wings. On this play, the deep wings are on the goal line extended, and I always have stressed, and I think it's important, when you're on the goal line, you are never to be in a hurry to signal a touchdown, because no matter how slow or how quick you signal a touchdown, the offense is only going to score 6 points. So the quickness of our signal is really irrelevant. We don't need to signal quickly. When someone scores or we think they score, it's important to be slow and observe the whole play. Was a player in bounds? Did they have control of the football? Is there anything that may not allow a score in this play? So here, you as on the goal line may have a view of the sideline, but you may not. So you have to check off with the short wing who's following the play, which you can see they did pretty well here. They looked at each other, and both of them, I believe, had the runner out of bounds at the 2-yard line. So that was really well done mechanically by these two officials. Obviously, with that view, you can see how close the runner is to sideline. So this isn't about why didn't they get the call right? I mean, this is just, this is literally a blade of grass, probably having the runner inbounds or out of bounds. What we want to talk about more is mechanically what they did, and they did this very well. I know we got a couple of replay officials on the call tonight. Would anyone like to talk about your process as you're looking at this play and how to break this down to help with this?
Sure, I can help with that, Dave.
Sure.
Speaking from the RO position, I'm waiting for my communicator to give me the official ruling on the field, because we know it's tight, we know it's a hot play. And the first thing I'm trying to identify is, at that point in time when his foot is near the 2-yard line, what is my best angle from a camera standpoint? Is it going to be the program feed? Is it going to be a handheld? Is it going to be a cart? Is it going to be a low end zone, high end zone? So as I'm looking in my multi-screen, I'll identify what I feel is the best one, go there first, and then start breaking it down. Is the foot in or out? If I can clearly see the foot's in, I can clearly see the ball's loose, and I got a touchback by rule because the ball's dead once it hits the pylon. If I don't have indisputable evidence, then the ruling on the field is going to stand as called out at the 2-yard line. So from our perspective is I have to prove beyond a doubt that his foot's in. There is a shot here where they showed a zoom in of the foot. It's like a slice of green. Back in the day, I think that's what they called it, but there's enough evidence, in my opinion, that I would change this, and I believe they changed it as well to a touchback.
Yes, yes. Matt, do you
And
want
then
to
it's the
talk?
Go ahead.
Do you want to talk about the rule about, since we ruled him out of bounds, why can you get involved with this and take him inbounds?
Well, that's a good point there. That's the continuing action. So if the immediate continuing action after that can be ruled on from, it can be extended, basically. Replay can help extend the play. So if that aspect, since we're talking the 2-yard line and the ball going an additional 2 yards and being recovered or not in the end zone, that's still the immediate continuing action of that play, as compared to if he was rolled out at the 10-yard line and the ball comes loose and goes into the end zone. And that's not the immediate continuing action. That's too long of a period, too long of a yardage for it to make it a touchback. So 2 yards, it happened within seconds of the ball coming out. That's still the immediate continuing action by rule from our powers that be of Blandino and the COC.
That's great. Anybody have any other comments or questions on this play?
I think, Dave, if I could speaking from a line of scrimmage perspective as a guy trailing this play, I can't tell you, let's assume that we were correct when we ruled him out of bounds, right? Let's assume that we're correct with the foot at the 2, which was the initial ruling here. I'm not necessarily going to go to the 2 because I don't know where the ball's at necessarily if it's in front of the runner, right? Because if the runner's running away from me, I have no sense exactly of where the ball is because 24 reaches with the football. So I don't know that I would necessarily stop at the 2. I'd probably want to go directly to my deep wing and say, hey, I had his foot out at the 2-yard line. Where was the ball? So we can work together on piecing it out for the spot. Now he or she may also have the foot out at the 2, and then they would have a better sense of where the ball was. And if they were already moving back toward the field of play, I'd let them take all of that. But if I'm trailing here, I don't necessarily want to stop at the 2. I want to go right to them if they're not coming back to me.
Well, that's a very good point. Okay. Let's move on to the next play.
Hey, Siegel, I got a question about that.
Yeah.
Are we better off just letting that play out and not ruling them out of bounds when it's that tight like that? Or is this, as soon as we have them out of bounds, we want to kill that? Because it looked like that deep guy was pointing to a spot where he was out of bounds and he took his eye off everything and didn't know that the ball came loose. Or was he shutting it down? Obviously can't ask him, but was he shutting it down by pointing at that spot where he stepped out of bounds?
Good question.
Maybe I'm not asking the correct question, but I don't know. It seemed like he stopped officiating that because he was going to come up to the half-yard line where the ball was, where he's reaching out compared to where he stepped out. Like Nick was saying about where the ball is in reference to him stepping out of bounds.
That's a good question. And
with replay, do you let that play out and rule touchback? Because it seems like he would have kept his eyes on that, he would definitely saw that the ball came loose, been able to rule the touchback. And then would replay come in and verify that he was still in bounds? I don't know. I guess I'm just asking what we do, because we always let fumbles and everything else go. Do we let this go too?
That's also a good question with replay. So for games with replay, and I think with Matt's earlier point, we know that replay can get involved either way we rule here. Because if he steps out of bounds at the 2-yard line or up near that, replay can create a score, or replay can continue this action. This is not like him stepping out at the 20-yard line. So really for this purpose, this is kind of a specific play, but we need to rule what we think it is. And then replay actually has the ability to do what they need to do based on what video evidence will show. So there really isn't a when in doubt philosophy on this, unlike some other plays. And I think that's the essence of your question, Jim.
Yep.
Good point that we still want to continue officiating all the time. Obviously you're going to focus on the foot on the out of bounds, but if you can, try to have knowledge of, did he have control of the football or not? And also, hopefully our back judge can provide that bit of information, because obviously they're not going to have an opinion on inbounds, out of bounds, but hopefully our back judge will be able to tell us if he had control of the ball.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Yeah, no, very good question.
So if I may comment, I think we want to not officiate to replay. We want to officiate to the right side of replay. So like David said, in this case, because of the continuing action, we can call it out and replay can fix it. That's the right side of replay. We don't want to officiate to let replay fix it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I like
it
that
does.
phrasing.
Yeah, we want to officiate to the right side of replay and not to replay.
All right, let's go to the next play. And this again was week 1 in featuring a block below the waist. So we all see that hit there. This is a defender going low on an offensive lineman, a lead blocker in front of the runner. Interestingly, last year and in previous years, this was within the 5-yard belt for defenders. So this is now illegal because it's not within the tackle box. So anything outside the tackle box, either team cannot block low. And this play is a great visual example why this is now a foul. And the foul is always there, or is there because of health and safety for the players. And when the replay is showing here, I mean, this is clearly to the knee area from the side, and obviously it can cause a leg injury. And for this player, and that's what happened here. I'm not sure how serious, but that's kind of doesn't matter. But as you see this, a defender comes low. He's not allowed to clear out the lead blocker, clearly into the knee area, and that's a dangerous hit. So let's just talk about mechanics. We had 2 flags in the play, which is excellent. In the deep wing, you're looking at lead blockers in this case. The widest players, so it's right there in your primary, and the short wing also does a nice job. And I think and Nick, you can speak on this much better than I can. But short wings, you're not always looking at the ball carrier. You're really looking at a lot of action in front of the ball carrier, and they did a nice job here.
Yeah, and I commend the line of scrimmage guy, because you got to see the catch first. You got that pass into the flat, and you got to get from the catch to the block quickly. Now, the nice part about this play for the line of scrimmage guy is that the ball carrier is not really under threat, right? Like, he's not under threat immediately, so you can expand your field of vision a little bit earlier on this. If he were being contacted, you need to stay with him to rule catch. But if that ball comes to him and is on the ground, it's forward. Here's nobody there. The ball's on the ground. You're going to notice the ball on the ground and make that an incomplete pass. But in this play, you can keep that field of vision wider and pick up that low block too, which you may not always get, because if there was somebody shooting inside there to kind of get in the way of that catch, you'd have to be with that a little bit longer.
And I think with safety fouls, this is clearly below the waist. when they show the replays. But you know, when you have a player fall down like this, I think almost every supervisor will tell you that if it's for safety fouls, if it's close to being below the waist, it's a foul. You want to make sure it's below the waist. I'm not saying those hits to the midsection, you rule those fouls, but you know, this is an example of why the rule is in place. They want fouls called here. So don't try to protect the defender from not having a foul here. Anybody have questions or comments on this? All right. Move on to the next play. This play probably happens, what, once a decade or something like that, or maybe once every 5 years. But this was on a try. Ball was blocked, then subsequently muffed in the end zone in the air by the defense. Ball hits the ground in the end zone, recovered by the defense, and then they run it back. So probably have seen this play several times. But you know, on field goals and tries, you know, something like this just doesn't happen often because it's either good, it's either wide left or wide right. Occasionally it's short. But when it's short, it's usually below the crossbar and out of play. So very rarely does a kick end in the field of play or even kicked into the neutral zone. So, you know, and those that are on the call that are deep wings or back judges, you can definitely help with this discussion. But let's talk about kicks that are short and when it actually becomes dead. On any scrimmage kick, much like a punt, much like a free kick, field goals are no exceptions. If the ball is kicked short, not touched by B at all, it is dead as soon as it hits the ground in the end zone. So that's one thing. As a back judge, you have the whistle on these. You're blowing the whistle as soon as the ball hits the ground in the end zone, if it's not touched by the defense. And we know if a kick is blocked, that's not deemed as a touch. So that initial block at the line of scrimmage or within 3 yards, that's defined as a block of a kick. So that doesn't apply. It's after that. Once a kick is blocked, then any touching by B beyond the neutral zone basically allows the ball to remain live for the remainder of the down until it's dead. So in this play, because it was blocked at the line of scrimmage, then it was touched in the air by B before hitting the ground in the end zone, it is a live ball. Very, very unusual to happen on this play. So a lot of things to process on this in a long time. And I think the officials did a nice job, whether or not they knew the rule, they let this play out. Because this is one of those where if you're not sure, let it go. And then we can talk about it afterwards. So if you're in a game without replay, you can let this happen and talk about it and try to put everyone's minds together and make a ruling to what you think it should be. Should the score stand or take it off? But only if you are positive the ball should be dead, then you should blow it. But in this case, they let it go, and that was the correct ruling, at least initially on the field. Anybody have comments on this play mechanically, or how to officiate it, or how to approach something when it's this unusual?
I think these block field goals are always confusing for me because, you know, as soon as I see this guy pick it up as a wing, as a short wing, I want to leave this play to the goal line, but I don't necessarily know that my field judge is going to get to the sideline. I've always struggled with where I should be on this, you know, like, should I end up at the pylon ahead of the runner, assuming I can actually physically pull that off? Or should I just be running with him, you know, like I would cover any other play, assume it like basically like I don't have a deep wing, you know what I mean?
So you're talking about 100 yards down the field?
Yeah.
Well, it's only going to be you. You don't have anybody ahead of you on this, on a
Sure.
run back.
Well, right, and I know this is an extra point, so either he scores or he doesn't. So in that, but I'm thinking more along the lines of you have a block field goal return. You know, I would, you know, you'd want to be as from a line scoring perspective. I'd want to be in a mindset like a punt return, but I also know that the guys under the goalpost probably aren't going to get out to the sideline. So it's just it's a tough position for me to try to figure out where I should be exactly.
Sure. Anybody want to provide Nick some guidance?
I'll just say from a field judge position under the post, I'm not gonna get spots at all unless, I mean, if we're you know, if the field goal is blocked, you know, and we're kicking in from a, you know, it's a longer field goal, I can come up to the goal line potentially, but as far as marking a spot on a run back, I don't think that's ever something I would even try to accomplish.
And then Dave, in a crew of 7 as a referee, you're gonna try to get back on this, right?
Yeah, good question. So the difference between 7-person and 8-person mechanics, with 8-person, center judge has the opposite goal line and the referee needs to have eyes on the kicker. For 7-person mechanics, the referee's got the goal line. So, you know, in that case, the referee does have a 10-15 yard head start, at least, and, you know, compared to the line of scrimmage officials, that might help. And I think, you know, the same question that Nick posed earlier, you kind of hope there's not a close play at the other goal line. You hope it's either easier in or out. But you just have to do what you can. And as a referee, it's important to stay wide, meaning stay in the center of the field if at all possible, because you do have help from your short wing on the sideline. So it may be tempting to get closer to the runner as they are running down the sideline, but you want to try to stay in between the hashes. And that angle may help you too. If there is a play near the goal line, you may have that space and distance to at least put a couple things together.
Dave, I have a question with, in regards to actually the rules test this week. With them batting it in the end zone, them fouling in the end zone. So I don't know if anybody's taken it yet, maybe I'll spoil it, but if that had hit him like it did in the air and then bounced in the end zone and then he batted it out of the back of the end zone, I guess I want to know if I got this right or not. I know we decline all 5 and 10 yard fouls, but is the penalty for this as a safety? So would that be a 1-point safety then?
Just so we're all answering the same question, do you know what the whole question was?
So you have on a try, the kick is blocked. It's in the air and then B touches it, just like we do with this play, but instead of him recovering it after it hit the ground and taking off and running, what would happen if he batted that out of the end zone? Just to make sure the kicking team didn't recover it.
So if I'm hearing that correctly, you have a kick that's blocked, then touched again in the air, and then batted in the end zone out of behind or backwards behind the end line, if that's correct.
Yes, sir.
So you don't have a change of possession
Correct.
on that play. So therefore, you still, the status of the ball is a kick. So if I'm hearing that right, you've got basically a foul by B during a kick on an unsuccessful try. Basic spot there is the previous spot, and you would go half the distance and replay.
Okay.
Anybody
No.
else want to offer a different opinion on that?
That's right, but I couldn't remember if they batted the ball backward, like legally backward from the field of play or not. There were so many of those plays with the try from the 8 that, like, there were 3 of those questions, but yes, Dave's right. If that's the play, then that's correct.
Yep. And now it's coming back to me as it was an interception on a 2-point try.
Okay.
From the 8. And there was a blindside block in the end zone. Or no, I'm sorry. He was in the end zone, took 4 steps, fumbled, and then his teammate batted it out of the back of the end zone.
When did the dog come on the field in this play?
Well, at the same time, the squirrel left.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we got all the facts that were on. But on that play, you have an interception, so you have a change of possession, and that changes a lot of circumstances and information for penalty
Yep.
enforcement. So since you had to change possession, basically A's opportunity to score is almost over. I mean, it's practically over. So their try was unsuccessful at that point. You had a foul after the change of possession. Since it's not a flagrant personal foul, an unsportsmanlike foul, dead ball foul, then that penalty is declined by rule.
So, okay, so they got it. Okay, because the
Mhm.
way it was and the way the wording was in the answer, I thought it was leading me toward giving them a 1-point safety, because I think that they made a mistake, a typo, and said decline A's foul, and it's actually B's foul.
Mhm.
So I stared at that one forever because I know the fuddle, and I understand that, but I didn't know if that was just a yardage situation, and safety is a different penalty. So I thought that was a different animal, but
Yeah.
it is,
Yeah.
but it is not.
Yeah. Hence the dog reference I made earlier. But-
Yeah, my 2-year-old little lab just wanted to throw her 2 cents in there. for a second.
Right. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks, buddy.
Yep, good question. All right, moving on to the next play, onside kick. So if you notice, we got 6 officials in the box, which is really helpful on an onside kick, at least one that is planned. And a good review, especially if you're going into conference play, who's watching what. The officials at the 35-yard line, they're treating the line as a plane glass. So we're not going to give any leeway for kicking team members who cross the 35 on this kick. The officials at the 45, they're really concentrating on touching of the ball. And if the ball is touched or kicked toward one side of the field, I've always said the officials on the opposite side of the field can be the most help on these plays. Because on one hand, you kind of smile and take a deep breath that the ball wasn't kicked to you. However, remember that if it was kicked to you, your brain is going now 1,000,000 miles a minute trying to process everything. So if the ball is kicked away from you on an onside kick, tell yourself to stay where you are and just try to piece everything together and provide the most help, not take the play off, because that's very easy to do. But you can look for blocks, you can look for touching, you can look for just about anything on the play, and probably provide the most help if the ball is not kicked to you. And obviously the officials on the 40 are looking for blocks. And the rule is the kicking team cannot block a receiving team member until the ball has gone 10 yards or until the ball has touched a receiving team member. What this is trying to avoid is those plays where a kicking team member clears out a receiving team member who is in position to catch the ball or recover the ball prior to it going to 10 yards. That's the rule and some of the rationale. So let's watch this play. And the ball is recovered right there around the 45. And as we watch this several more times, you'll notice a suspect block just below the ball or closer to the camera, closer to the bottom of the screen, or on this angle, not that angle. To the left. So number 4, that's the block in question. So what we have to determine is, was that block, did it happen prior to the ball crossing the 45 or right as the ball crossed the 45? let me see if I can slow this here and stop it right about the time. The block, and we all wish we could do this on the field, go frame by frame, slow motion. So there's the point of the block. And you see the ball. And obviously with this camera angle, it's pretty difficult to, it may be difficult to say that's conclusive one way or the other, which highlights another point on the field. And I think I think it was Paul's point earlier. Let's not try to officiate to replay. Because replay may not help us. I mean, this is a great example. I mean, this is the camera angle they have. So they're not judged on what they think. They have to be very clear on what video will show. So we on the field have to try to do everything we can to get this right, or at least make our best ruling on this. Nick, Austin, Jim, anybody else want to provide your input on these onside kicks?
I think as line of scrimmage guy, this is obviously a spot that we're not normally in, right? We're not usually up here for these kicks because we're usually deep. So when we're here, we really have to work hard. And this is a tough kick because it's dead center. Usually we talk about, oh, the kick's away from me, so I'm going to watch for blocks, and the guy on the play side is going to watch for touching. And we just have to be prepared. This is a good example of a play that we just have to be prepared for, right? We just have to be prepared to pick up anything because our F and our S are really worried about the line. They're really worried about whether or not this recovery is legal. And even though that block is going to be in their field of vision, it's tough to see both of those things at the same time with how close that ball is to the line. So that's the whole reason we're up on this for as a line of scrimmage guy is for these types of plays. So we've got to be looking when that ball gets dribbled up the middle of the field. I would love to say that I'm going to shift my focus to those blocks, but it's hard to avoid the ball when it's bouncing around guys and worried about touching. So that would, I would want to prioritize the blocks over the ball because you just expect an onside kick like that up the middle that there's going to be a problem with potential block.
I mean, this is close to being perfectly executed as far as, it's clearly extremely difficult to officiate on the field. Because I mean, line judge and headlines, you're not going to have a great angle to, determine when that block occurred and when the touching occurred to be able to put those together. That's extremely difficult. It looks like, there's other bodies in between for the F and S angle as well down the line. So the number one priority needs to be the ball. And then you try to get to the block and that all just happens. It's very bang, bang. So, I mean, I guess, again, to the earlier point, not to officiate to replay. I mean, you really need replay on a play like this, but you just got to piece it together and try to talk through, make your ruling and come in and talk about it. And then, just do your best with piecing it all together with the extra eyes there. But this is just such a tough play with it being right down the middle, especially.
As far as who initiates the block, whether it's the kicking team or the receiving team, it's more often than not that the receiving team is trying to initiate the blocks, but the kicking team will be trying to block the players that are near where the ball is actually at.
Yeah, and certainly this guy that gets blocked is not moving toward the ball. Right, Bill? Like you don't have this guy's just standing there. He's not.
Correct.
If he was moving forward to try to take that guy on, which he really is not.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to bring up because that is something that, without having the down the line angle from H or L, that is one thing that you can, have quite a bit of confidence in saying, okay, the kicking team initiated, or I think that's certainly where you could help there, to piece that together. That's a solid piece of information to bring to the table in that case. So that is That's a good point.
And just curious, Paul or Bill, as a back judge, what help can you provide here, if any?
That's going to be tough for us. Like somebody said earlier, it's right down the middle. We're at this point 9.5 yards away from the ball being touched beyond the 10 yards or not. We're probably, our best bet's going to be maybe the block. But I mean, that's a tough play for us too.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be whether or not that receiving player is active or passive. If he's going to try to actively block or be passively fielding the ball.
That's a good point. And this play is, and I'll just bring one last point on this, is this is not targeting, but that potentially could be another help that maybe a back judge, umpire, center judge, if there's a person, or a referee, might be able to provide on that play. Because obviously this player is defenseless. So you got forceful contact to the head or neck. That could be in play. And this is shoulder to shoulder. This is not targeting. I just want to be really clear on that. But that's another aspect to consider on these onside kicks. There's a lot to talk about. These are difficult plays.
One last point is if that ball's only bounced once, don't forget we have KCI is on the table.
Mm-hmm. Very good point.
One more thing about that too is those blocks usually happen prior to 10 yards, and with that block coming after 10 yards makes it, I'd like to say more easy to be focused on the ball because you don't have a block to worry about as a line of scrimmage guy. But then obviously that puts a lot more strain on the guys that are on that restraining line too. So
Sure.
that's just something I'm sitting there watching this over and over is those blocks typically happen 7-8 yards, maybe 9 at the most. They don't have them at 11 or 12.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good point. Usually they do happen at 7 or 8 yards, and that just makes it even more challenging. That was a tough play. That goes in the category. Glad it wasn't in my game. Sorry if it was anybody on this call, but tough. Moving on. This happened I think 2 weeks ago. A run back, and then a somersault into the end zone. So we know we have an unsportsmanlike, and the key here is where it happened, because the rule change a handful of years ago is unsportsmanlike fouls in the field of play are live ball fouls. So if you rule this happening at the 1, we're going to take the score off the board and go 15 yards from there, and B will have the ball 1st and 10 at the 16. If you rule this foul happening at the goal line or in the end zone, the score counts. And now the 15-yard will be assessed either on the try or the kickoff. So I'll start off by the disclaimer. And again, we have a lot of people from a lot of different conferences, different levels. So do what your supervisor says. They may have a preference. Do you put this in the end zone? Do you put this at the 1? Do you penalize the team more for unsportsmanlike and take away the score if you're in doubt? I'm sure there's lots of different opinions of that if you're in doubt. If there is no doubt, make the foul it's supposed to. And for those that are working with replay is not really going to be able to help us here. This is something we need to get on the field, because they will not know when we have deemed when the foul started. That's why this is not a reviewable play. It's our judgment on the field where this foul begins. So just know the people in the booth probably aren't going to help at all. I think the way I look at it, you have to kind of determine where the player starts their somersault And you can use a couple things to help. You can use, the player's body, are the feet in the field of play, obviously where the ball is at that point. I think a lot of people will say it's probably better if you see most of the body in the field of play to rule this at the 1 and just penalize from there. I wouldn't penalize at the 1/4-yard line. I don't think anybody's that good. So, penalize at the 1 or 2 if you're going to have this in the field of play and move on from there. Any comments on this?
I think you're dead on, Dave. I think if I wasn't sure, I'm certainly not going to call a touchdown back for this if he was in or out. And as a reminder, as came up last year, replay cannot get involved as to when this foul started.
That's correct. Replay is out of this. Now, I would provide objective facts if needed, but I cannot stop the game and create a foul and tell you exactly where it happened. But if you needed some guidance, I'll do the best I can. But it's got to be clear and obvious one way or the other for me to give you any guidance from the booth.
Yeah, and
that's administratively only.
And I think that what Matt said there kind of is true in a lot of regards. There are official stoppages and reviews that replay can by rule get involved with, but otherwise they can provide some information. But I don't expect on this particular play, Matt, you would have anything to say about it.
No, this one's way too close. I will not get involved at all. It has to be clearly in the field or clearly in the end zone for me to give you any type of factual information.
Here's a play, just basic mechanics, and maybe it's unlearning some habits that we all learned in high school or small college, or probably not high school, but maybe in small college. Because I remember one of my first college supervisors would kind of tell us not to call this an offside because the defender's going backwards at the time of the snap. What's the real advantage? That's not how we think anymore. If a defender is in the neutral zone at the snap or close to the neutral zone of the snap, it's a foul. Make it a foul. Make this easy. There's no reason to make this complicated and say the defender was outside the neutral zone. And the one way to think about it is everybody in the stands knows that's offside. So let's not try to outsmart 80,000 people in the stands or 8,000 people in the stands, no matter how many people you have in the game. If defender jumps like that, it's a foul. Just make it simple. Try not to determine was his helmet in the neutral zone or not. Anything to add, Nick?
No, I think the biggest thing is, if they get in, they got to get completely back out. That's the philosophy now, which to Dave's point has changed. That certainly was not always the case when I started on the line of scrimmage, but if they get in, they got to get all the way out. Even if they're backing out and they the ball snap, even though that seems like a disadvantage to the defense, just make it deal out.
And a lot of these offenses, they will be smart enough and recognize that the defender's in. So we've all watched football for a long time. What is the offense going to think? They have a free play. Well, if that's the way they think, their play is going to be a little bit different. It may not be well run, but again, let's not really mess them over and not have a flag here. Again, the whole stadium knows it's a foul. Let's just go with it, and that's because what it is. It's a foul. So let's make sure we get these. Real easy to talk yourself out of it, but again, just trying to unlearn possibly some prior teaching. This play was real interesting because, again, how many times does this happen? Probably not much, at least to the specific actions of this. So we have another pylon play, and to score a touchdown, One way to do it is for the runner to get the ball inside the pylon or over the pylon as they are crossing the goal line. But here you can clearly see the ball is outside the pylon. So now the question becomes, when do they get the goal line extended? Is it when the body goes over the pylon, or is it when they have a foot or body part on the ground in the end zone? So the rule is when the offensive player has a body part down in the end zone, that is when they get the goal line extended. Well, as we will watch the replays here, the question for all of us to ask and think about is, does the runner get a body part down in the end zone? So we'll see if another angle shows up and we can answer that question as it happens. Here we go.
He's out of bounds.
That's right. He's out of bounds. He doesn't get his whole foot in bounds and clearly in bounds. It's half in, half out, which makes him out of bounds, which means he never touched the ground in the end zone. Therefore, doesn't get the goal line extended. Therefore, the ball never crossed the goal line because it crossed the sideline first, and that's where we should put him for the next play. So no score on this. The ball should be at about the 1 yard line, maybe the half yard line. And again, how often does this happen? Not often at all. But the wonders of camera work can help us with that. Anybody have comments on
What's
this?
weird is if he would have kicked the pylon, he would have had goal line extended.
Yeah.
But he tried
Which
to
is
avoid the pylon.
usually what happens. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This play was just like mind blowing to me. I don't remember ever seeing anything like this. Really interesting play. And I mean, I think 100 times out of 100 probably on the field, I would call this a touchdown, but never really thought through it like this. But yeah, it's just such a good play.
That's a great point, Austin. And it's great, I think, for on-field officials because it helps you really know the rule. And if you're working Division III, Division II college, I don't want to say the easiest thing to do, but most likely the pylon's going to get hit. So this is a touchdown. You don't need to have the greatest eyes in Division III football. But it's also a play that makes me really admire all the replay officials on this call and that'll watch this, because you've got to look at this in a very different way than on field. You have to know all these rules and be able to rule on it and actually say, this is what happened, not at the speed of the game, make a ruling as, was the pylon touched? Was it not touched? Did the ball hit in bounds? Did it not? I mean, you've got to get that all right. And that's just, my hat's off to all the replay officials on a call like this.
I would also point out that even with replay, where your cameras are and how many you have is critical, because I would venture to guess that at any game that I'm going to work this year, there's no camera anywhere close to where those camera angles were that they showed. Because it happened it's happened on the wrong side of the field.
That's a great point. Great point. Anybody else with comments on that play? Okay, I think we'll show one more, and that'll be it for tonight. And this play was from a couple on our tape last week, basically dealing with forward progress. And, a common rule of officiating is we don't want to blow the play dead unless we see the ball. And that's important. We always want to hold out. We need to see the ball before we blow our whistle. On this play, you have to piece a couple things together, because I think, as you'll see, the sideline officials aren't going to be able to see the ball, or might have a difficult time seeing the ball. So they are not really positive when forward progress is stopped. And this is a good example that the crew can potentially help officiate this play. So as a referee, as an umpire, as a center judge, you may be able to determine that runner was coming back to as me as a referee, was coming back to me with firm control of the ball. So I can help provide information at the end of the play to rule forward progress. The umpire can also, potentially say something like that. If we are in a short yard situation or an obvious run near the goal line, perhaps, you never know. The field judge, side judge may have a great angle on plays like these and provide that information. So the whole crew has an opportunity on these plays to get it right. You just don't know if you might be the official in the position to have the best angle. So saying all that, what we see here is the runner clearly stopped, clearly being driven backwards, and then the ball is ripped out. So by rule, the play really should be over at the point of forward progress. Therefore, there shouldn't be a fumble on this play. We should rule it dead. And because we rule forward progress, know that for those teams in replay's out of it, because we rule forward progress. And that's important. If you're on the field, when you tell the referee what you have, it's important to say either you have forward progress or that you have the runner down. Those do not mean the same thing. Those are two very different things. Because if we announce that the runner's down, then replay is going to take a look, and replay is going to see the runner was not down, and there's a fumble, because they cannot touch forward progress at all on this play. But if we rule forward progress, and that's what we announce to the referee or tell the referee, then the announcement will clear things up for replay, and they won't really have much to look at this play. So real important to use the correct language on the field, because those two statements mean very different things. And it's important to try to piece this together as a crew to get it right. Nick, anything to add from a line of scrimmage perspective?
Yeah, I had a similar play early in the season where we let the play go on probably too long because we couldn't see ball, right? Like the wings couldn't see the ball, massive bodies. And one of the takeaways that we really talked about after the game was that we should have involved the referee, the umpire, and the center judge just to get an opinion. We want an opinion as to what they think about progress, because I'm running out because I can't see the ball, and I might show this play next week. I'm running out because I can't see the ball. And then the ball comes out, and I'm like, well, I don't know that progress was stopped, so I should probably throw my beanbag. And then we get to the umpire, and I asked the wrong question. You asked the wrong question. Was the runner down? And the umpire says no, because the runner was on bodies. Well, as to Dave's point, that's different than was progress stopped. Maybe we would have gotten to a different conclusion if we had asked that conversation, had that question about progress. But, and Matt, I think you were about to unmute if you want to talk about what replay can and cannot get involved in on this particular play.
Yes, when the line to gain and the goal line are not threatened, then forward progress only has one exception for us. So if the ruling on the field is forward progress and the ball comes loose, replay can make it a fumble if the ball is out prior to or immediately with the first contact by the defender. So in this instance, the first contact by the defender happened, and it was well after the fact that the ball came loose. So if forward progress is ruled, we're out of it. But if the ball comes loose just prior to or immediately after the initial contact, then that's the one exception that replay can get involved with, but I've yet to see it.
Well, I'll try to make sure you don't see it this coming weekend.
These plays are this is another not easy play. It's easier here on a Monday night looking at this to say, well, the referee, I would have been able to see this and rule correctly. on the field, your perception of is he really coming back to me? Is his forward progress been stopped? It's not always clear. So these are tough. So you have to give each other the space and try to provide the space and time to think about this play again. And to say, where did we think the progress may have been stopped, or was the pile moving forward or backward? And yeah, it is, sometimes officiating is asking the right questions, and sometimes it's being lucky in asking the right question. But the point is just, we don't want a quick whistle here. That's not the point that I don't think that I'm trying to make. It's just, let's piece this together. The H is coming in on this play with where he thinks the spot is. And now we just need to have the right conversation as far as, did he have the ball at this point? Was he being driven backward and still have the ball? Was the ball ripped out? Did he lose it on first contact? Those are perhaps maybe other questions to ask after the play on this. And not, again, there's no need for a quick ruling. Take the time. This is a play to have a conference. Maybe this is a chance to say that publicly. We hear so much, don't have an officials conference. Have an officials conference on this play. Let's do that. Because let's try to talk about it and get it right. Because it's I'm sure a pretty sickening feeling to look at video on the sideline and realize we can't do anything to correct this play. Because replay has to be out of it.
Yeah, and Dave, replay does appreciate the referees making an official announcement on these types of plays and make it clear to everyone, do you have forward progress or do you have them down by roll? And that really tells us right away what we can and cannot do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good point. Any other points on this play? All right. I think that's time, Nick. I think we should wrap it up.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I really appreciate you taking the lead on this. Just so everybody is on the same page for our next meeting in 2 weeks. We do that. I hope you're all looking at the spreadsheet here. In 2 weeks, the plan is for us to do a teachable moment situation. And this is just plays that people want to share. In the email that went out this morning, there's a link to this spreadsheet. If you've got a play you want to discuss at our meeting in 2 weeks, please put it in. If you're in the COC and plays on Exos, if you tell me where it is with as much information as possible, I will pull the play for you. I will probably upload it to YouTube ahead of the meeting just so people can see it if they want. But I'm really hopeful that among this group, we each have a play or two that we'd be willing to share. So please don't hesitate to do that. If you're sharing via Huddle or you want to download an email with me, that's fine too. I'll try to compile it. I'm going to try to let other people drive their clips, but I figure if I download them all, then I can handle that for you if that's what you want. But that's what's coming up in 2 weeks. And then Billy Williams is going to have a presentation 2 weeks after that. That date is like the 21st or something like that. It's like the 3rd week of October, or maybe the 4th week. I don't know. These dates are in the email, so you'll know. You get the calendar invitations. And then we'll do another teachable moments to kind of wrap up our year in early November with this group. So keep thinking about your first half plays that you'd like to share. Try to think of a play or two from the second week or the second half of the season that you'd like to be willing to share. But I think the discussion tonight was among the best we've had, and I really appreciate Dave for leading and everybody for being involved. So that's all we've got. I hope everybody has a great week this week if you're working, or enjoy the week off if you're not. And I look forward to seeing everybody back here in 2 weeks. So thank you so much for being on tonight, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.